Hello, you powerful sacred being. We often hear that it is good to be positive, maintain a positive attitude, create a life in which you are joyous, you think good thoughts, you do good deeds. Positivity as a tool to arrive at the abundance that is your birthright. But sometimes when we are in our deepest, darkest moments, we wonder, how does positivity really help us? We begin to notice that there is also that world where positivity is sometimes used as a weapon, and it's called toxic positivity. It's a space in which a problem or a negative situation is overcast by the idea of positivity. But how does being positive work? How does it allow us to align with our abundance? Let me begin by telling you a story. It was somewhere in the early 2000s. I had traveled to Mumbai in India. There I had arrived at Jahangir Art Gallery. So from there, I take a taxi and I meet a gentleman named Dharma. What a beautiful name. And that was enough to start a great conversation with this man as he took me around to different places that I wanted to go to in Mumbai. The conversations were about spirituality. It was about growing up in that space. His story is also really beautiful. He ran away from his village when he was about 12 years old and comes to the city because he wanted to try and escape the unfortunate darkness that he came from. And he began to clean bus windows, and that's how his life developed, yes. And the next thing you know, the bus drivers decided to teach him how to drive a bus. So before ever driving a car, he actually drove a bus. And from that point, he learned to drive cars, and eventually he had reached a point where he now owned a car and he was a taxi driver. So what a beautiful story. I said to him, wow, you're really inspirational. As our friendship developed that day, he insisted, he said, you must come and see my wife. You must come and visit my family. And I asked him, well, where are you? And he says, I live in this government rehabilitated area where these little hutments where people used to live has been converted into small roomed flats by the government. Yes? Now, I'm one for adventure at any moment, especially when there's a good special connection that has been made. So we drive and we arrive to this space. Dharma introduces me to his family, and within this family, I meet a lady. First, I go into her home, which is nothing more than a 3x3 space. And there's soot on the walls from burning wood. The floors seem dirty. The things that they have kept around the house are broken. And it was what you would expect from a home that doesn't have much. And in that space, about 6 people were living, and as soon as I entered, they came in and offered me a rickety little plastic chair while all of them sat on the floor. I, of course, said no, and I put the chair away and I sat down with them to simply have a conversation. Immediately, this lady begins to talk about how difficult life is, how every morning she wakes up and she's crying because she has to take her children and she has to go out onto the streets to beg, that the money that Dharma makes is just not enough, that every day they are in a space where they don't have enough. And my heart went out to them, of course. And I sat there connecting with them, holding her hand, just feeling for her in that moment. There was so much of sadness in that space. And as this conversation is continuing, of course, they ask me where I'm from. We're kind of just getting introduced to each other. In comes a lady to the door of the house. And the first woman I met, she says to me, That's my sister. And this sister, unlike the first woman I've met, looks completely different. The first woman I met was slightly malnourished. Her clothes were torn. But her sister comes in. She's this boisterous looking woman, right? She's wearing this sari around her. And she comes to me and she says, you must come to my house. You've come to their space. Please, you must come to my space. And I realized that her room or her home or flat or apartment is right next to where her sister's apartment is, of course. And I say, of course I will come to your space. Now, I had no expectations, or maybe I did. Maybe I realized that, of course, I'm going to enter into another space that looks like a hut, to a space where there is certain sadness and poverty. We walk over to her house, and I have entered suddenly this extremely clean space, a space where there is some form of minimalism, everything is more organized. And within that home as well, there were 5 people living. Yes, it is her and her 3 daughters and 2 sons. And that's 6. That's 6 people living. And as I enter that space, I'm wondering, well, what is the difference between the 2 sisters? But it was immediately apparent. The sister that I met from the get-go, she kept talking to me about how blessed their life was, how when her husband passed away, she made a decision to send her children to a government school, that she wanted education to be the priority, that she worked really hard not to beg on the streets or not to take them to beg on the streets, and she began to clean houses so that she could provide for them. And she had taught her children that the house had to be clean at all times. These are choices that one sister made. And this had led to then her oldest son getting admission to a certain college. It had led to the vibration she had created in this particular home. In that moment, my entire perspective on life transformed. I was in deep realization that you can be part of the same family. You can be sisters, you can be related by blood, but your destiny could completely be different depending on the choices you make. Did one sister make more money than the other? Absolutely not. They were still in a space where they were in low income. They were in the category of poverty. But this other sister had decided she was not going to allow that to dictate her positivity. This sister had a belief system. They believed in a certain culture, they believed in a certain God, and they followed that to the T. They maintained a clean house, they always had good things to say, whereas the first sister that I met, in fact, she is the older one, the first sister I met had already gotten into a repetitive system of negativity, where she always felt like she had less. The tale of 2 sisters has been the very foundation of how I approach different people when I meet them, whether they are clients, whether they are friends. It really shows us in this moment and in this story that I've told you, it shows us that positivity has a specific result. The vibration of choosing positive words, taking positive inspired action in your life, of choosing thoughts, while there may be intrusive thoughts, while there may be negative thoughts, but to bring it back to a positive thought, to occupy the mind with a high vibrational belief, actually reprograms your entire life. It reorganizes the vibration of your entire life. Let's take a moment now to talk about why that is, right? How does it work? When you choose to shift your belief, And this means when you choose to not remain in the limiting belief that you are lacking, that you are in scarcity, but you shift your belief into abundance, it changes also the emotions in your life. It changes your perspective on life. And it also changes the intentions that you set into different things you do in life. And that, in turn, makes you choose better words, better thoughts, and better actions. And when you do this, the vibration that is projected from your body like a ripple in still water. It ripples out into the universe, goes and creates harmonic resonance with positive things, with high vibrations, similar to the vibration you sent out, and brings you home better abundance. It brings you home abundance, it brings you home opportunity. But if you are in a space where you are sending out negative thoughts, words, and actions, where your emotions are always in sadness and anger and resentment, and your belief is still stuck in the space where you believe that things are never going to get better, then you will attract towards you results that are aligned with that vibration. This is the story of the two sisters. And within this story, I want us to realize that we create our reality. That positivity and choosing positiveness and attitude of gratitude, to remember to be in awe of the beauty that the world presents to us, no matter what the situation, actually decreases the possibility of a negative situation in the future. It allows you to control the blast radius, as I call it. So let's say you have a moment of anger, a moment of negativity. If you remember in that moment to control the blast radius of that emotion, where you don't allow to explode across into all of the days to come, where you don't pull up the past and say this is a pattern and I always go through this, but you decide in that moment to be grateful, you decide to learn the lesson from it, you decide to move forward from it in a mature and compassionate manner, you then are affecting a future where your abundance is, which gets pushed away by the blast radius, in fact does not do that. Instead, your abundance is waiting right after that, ready to come to you when you have regulated your nervous system, when you have realigned with the truth that after all, abundance is my birthright, because abundance is your birthright. So remember this as you move forward in life. A positive attitude always brings positive results. I love you. Thank you.